My daughter-in-law called me a failure and stole my money. What happened next made her regret everything. You know that moment when you suddenly realize you become invisible? Not the cool superhero kind, but the nobody gives a damn about you anymore kind. That's my life now in Cincinnati's East Side, living in my son's basement at 62. The name's Robert Morgan, and I used to be somebody in this town. Easter Sunday, 2023. The day I finally understood exactly what my family thinks of me. David's wife Lisa had spent all morning arranging her Pinterest-perfect table, complete with those little egg-shaped name cards and napkins folded like rabbits. Must have taken her hours. Meanwhile, I'd spent the morning fixing their garbage disposal that had been making that grinding noise for weeks. Not that anyone noticed. Everyone was there, David's in-laws, some neighbors I barely recognized, even Lisa's gym friend with a husband who wouldn't stop talking about crypto. The ham looked good, I'll give her that. The table was buzzing with conversation about property values and school districts, topics where a washed-up auto shop owner's opinion apparently wasn't needed. I kept quiet, pushing potatoes around my plate, until Lisa's voice cut through the noise. "I'm just so thankful Owen got David's brains and ambition," she said, glass of wine tilting dangerously in her hand, as she gestured toward my 15-year-old grandson. "Thank God he didn't inherit the Morgan knack for bad luck and bad investments." The table went silent. Every eye shifted between Lisa and me. David, my own flesh and blood, just chuckled awkwardly and patted her arm. "Come on, honey. Dad did all right for 30 years before the crash. Some things you can't control." That's my son, somehow making it worse while pretending to defend me, like I'd chosen to lose my shop during the 2008 financial disaster. Like I'd planned for my wife of 40 years to die from cancer right after. I felt something burning behind my eyes. The kind of burning a man my age isn't supposed to show. My fork clattered against the china as I stood up, mumbling something about needing my medication. Nobody tried to stop me. Back in my room, really just a converted storage area with a bed, I sat on the edge of my mattress and let the tears come. No shame in crying when no one can see you. Marge would have never let that comment slide. My Marge, with her fiery red hair and that laugh that could fill a stadium. She would have stood up right there and told Lisa exactly where she could shove her Easter ham. We were a team, Marge and me. Built that auto shop from nothing in '79, the year we got married. Morgan's Motors. We fix it like we own it. And we did own it. Every square inch paid for with sweat and overtime. Now I'm the broken thing nobody wants to fix. The extra mouth that's stretching David and Lisa's mortgage-heavy budget. The embarrassing old man who still uses a flip phone and doesn't understand why anyone needs 14 different streaming services. This morning I tried to help Owen with his car. Just an oil change. Basic stuff every man should know. He looked at me like I'd suggested we go hunt dinosaurs. "Grandpa, people don't do that anymore. That's what Jiffy Lube is for," he said, not even looking up from his phone. "Besides, Mom says your clothes smell like grease for days when you mess with that stuff." I remember teaching David how to change oil when he was 10. He was so proud, he called all his friends to come watch him do it himself. Now my own grandson won't even step into a garage with me. Last week, Lisa threw out my old toaster. I found it in the garbage bin and brought it back in. Just needed a new heating element, which I had in my parts box. "Robert, we don't need your junk cluttering up the house," she snapped when she saw it on the counter. "We're getting a new one delivered tomorrow. This isn't your garage where you can hoard broken things." That's what I am to them. A broken thing. A relic that takes up space. Remember summer of '79? Marge and I watched Alien at the Oakley Drive-In. She squeezed my hand so hard during the chest burster scene, I lost feeling in my fingers. Then we both laughed about it all the way home. The neighbors were having a block party, and even though it was nearly midnight, they waved us in. We shared beers and burgers until dawn, talking about everything and nothing. Back then, neighbors knew each other. We shared tools, watched each other's kids, and actually gave a damn when someone was struggling. Now, David barely knows the names of the people next door, and Lisa just complains about their unmowed lawn lowering property values. I'm not just nostalgic of the good old days. I'm nostalgic for when I mattered, when my skills and experience were worth something. When I wasn't just the old man in the basement who should be grateful for the scraps of attention thrown his way. I told David yesterday, I'm not old, I'm classic, like that Fleetwood Mac cassette you used to play in my truck. He just smiled, that patronizing smile people give children, and confused elderly folks. Life's like an old pickup. It might rattle and smoke, but it'll get you where you're going if you don't give up on it. Lisa overheard me telling this to Owen last week while I was fixing their leaky kitchen faucet. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might fall out of her head. Nobody needs your ancient wisdom, Robert. Owen has Google for advice. That stung worse than anything. In my day, wisdom was earned through living, not through searching. Every mistake taught you something. Every success showed you what worked. You couldn't just ask the machine for the answer. For 40 years, I've kept a leather-bound notebook Marge gave me on our first anniversary. Marge's book, I call it, started as a place to jot down repair notes and customer information for the shop. Over time, it became a record of everything I learned, not just about cars, but about life. When Marge got sick, I wrote down her words too. The insights that came between the pain and the morphine. Wisdom worth more than gold, at least to me. Remember to see people's actions in the light of their pain, not your expectations, she told me 3 days before she died. I wrote that down with shaking hands as she drifted to sleep. I keep the notebook hidden now. Lisa's on a minimalist kick, throwing out anything that doesn't spark joy or whatever that Netflix lady preaches. Last month, she donated 3 boxes of my books without asking. Said they were collecting dust and making the place look cluttered. After Easter dinner, I retreated to the tiny closet under the stairs where I keep my few remaining possessions. It's tight and smells like mothballs, but it's the only place in this house where I feel I can breathe. I pulled out Marge's book and ran my fingers over the worn leather cover. Open to a random page from 1987. Customer satisfaction isn't about fixing the problem. It's about making them feel heard while you fix the problem. Marge underlined that one. She handled the books and the customers while I handled the wrenches. Perfect team. She knew how to make people feel valued even when they were being unreasonable. I was never good at that part. Through the thin walls, I could hear Lisa complaining to David. How long is your dad going to live here? We can't afford to support him forever. David's response was too quiet to make out, but I didn't need to hear it. His silence at dinner had said everything. I closed the notebook and pressed it to my chest. Felt my heart beating against the leather, steady and sure despite everything. Marge, I whispered to the empty closet, I'm going to show them what I'm worth. Maybe not to them, but to myself at least. The decision crystallized in that moment. I might be living in their house, but I didn't have to live by their judgment. 62 isn't dead. I've still got time to prove there's value in this old frame, this experienced mind. Tomorrow, I'll start figuring out exactly how. Because if there's one thing I learned from rebuilding engines for 30 years, it's that sometimes the parts others throw away are exactly what you need to get things running again. The morning after that disastrous Easter dinner, I woke up with a purpose. Not the earth-shattering kind they talk about in those inspirational YouTube videos my grandson watches. Just a simple determination not to waste another day being the family ghost. I waited until David and Lisa left for work and Owen for school, then walked a mile and a half to the public library. My knees protested the whole way, but the spring air felt good in my lungs. Reminded me of mornings at the shop, rolling up the garage door to greet the day, coffee in hand, before the first customer arrived. Cincinnati's East Branch Library isn't much to look at, just a squat brick building from the 70s with windows tinted the color of weak tea. But inside it was quiet and clean, with that comforting smell of books and lemon floor cleaner. A place where nobody would rush me or roll their eyes if I asked a stupid question. I hadn't planned on meeting anyone, just wanted to use one of their computers to look up some things. But as I stood there staring at the row of monitors like they were controls for a nuclear submarine, this voice behind me said, "First time on our computers, Han." She was about my age, maybe a bit older, silver hair cut in a no-nonsense bob, glasses hanging from a beaded chain around her neck, and a smile that reached all the way to her eyes. Her name tag read Ellen Volunteer. That obvious, huh? I said, jamming my hands into my pockets like a schoolboy caught passing notes. Only to another dinosaur, she said with a wink. I was a head librarian here for 30 years before budget cuts sent me packing. Now I volunteer 3 days a week teaching other fossils like us how to navigate the digital age. 2 hours later, Ellen had walked me through setting up an email account, shown me how to search for information without getting scammed, and even helped me download a few apps on the ancient smartphone David had tossed my way last Christmas. It's not rocket science, Robe. She laughed when I accidentally opened the camera instead of the browser for the third time. It's just a phone with delusions of grandeur. Ellen's straightforward approach reminded me of Marge. No nonsense, but kind about it. By the time I left, I had her number my contacts list. For tech emergencies, she insisted. Back at David's house, I tried to connect to their Wi-Fi to practice what Ellen had taught me. The password was taped to the fridge. Owen Rules 2023. But when David caught me typing it into my phone, you'd think I was trying to hack the Pentagon. Dad, what are you doing? He snatched the phone from my hand, his face flushed with annoyance. You can't just get on our network. Our internet is already slow, and you'll use up all our data watching videos or something. I just wanted to check my new email. I explained, trying to sound casual, like a man my age having an email account wasn't some kind of miracle. New email? Since when you have email? His tone was so incredulous it made my stomach tighten. Since today, a nice lady at the library helped me set up. David looked like he was about to say something more, then just shook his head and walked away, mumbling about how I shouldn't touch things I don't understand. That evening at dinner, I made the mistake of mentioning YouTube to Owen, asking if he could show me how it worked. The boy nearly choked on his spaghetti. He was laughing so hard. Grandpa, did you just call it a YouTube? It's just YouTube. Nobody says a YouTube unless they're like 100 years old. Lisa smirked from across the table. Don't waste your time, Owen. Your grandfather still thinks VCRs are cutting edge. I took the jab silently, but something was building inside me. Not anger exactly, but a quiet determination. That night, I slipped Marge's book from its hiding place and opened it to a blank page. Marge always kept her own journal. Write things down, Robbie, she'd say. Not just what happened, but how it felt. It's how you remember who you are when the world tries to tell you differently. I ran my fingers over the leather cover, almost feeling her hand beneath mine. Then I wrote, Today I learned that invisibility doesn't have to be permanent. Ellen saw me. Maybe others will too. The next morning, I walked back to the library with a $20 bill in my pocket, my whole week's allowance from the pittance David begrudgingly gave me from my Social Security check. Ellen was there, shelving books on a cart. Well, look who's back for more punishment, she said with a grin. What digital mountain are we climbing today? I want to learn about YouTube, I told her, probably sounding as serious as if I'd announced I wanted to learn brain surgery. My grandson watches it all the time. People making videos about everything under the sun. Ellen's eyes lit up. Now there's an idea. What would you want to make videos about, Robe? The question caught me off guard. Make videos? Me? But once the seed was planted, it grew roots almost instantly. I know how to fix things, I said slowly. Cars, appliances, stuff around the house. Used to own a shop before the crash. People these days throw everything away instead of fixing it. Ellen nodded thoughtfully. Repair videos are hugely popular. Saving money is always in style, especially now with inflation. And you got that trustworthy grandpa vibe. By the end of the week, Ellen had shown me the basics of recording, editing, and uploading videos using just my phone. I practiced in the library, filming myself explaining how to check tire pressure, using a pencil as a stand-in gauge. My first attempt at home was a disaster. I propped the phone against a mug on the workbench in David's garage and hit record, planning to show how to fix a sticky cabinet hinge. Instead, I somehow filmed 15 straight minutes of my left work boot and a running commentary to an invisible audience. Watching it back, I had to laugh at myself. Move over, Spielberg. Morgan's on the scene now. But I didn't give up. The next attempt was better. You could actually see the hinge in my hands working on it, even if the lighting was terrible. When Lisa found my old AM/FM radio in the trash last Tuesday, the one Marge and I used to listen to baseball games on the back porch, something snapped inside me. That radio had survived 30 years of garage life, only to be deemed too noisy for their precious house. I rescued it after she left, taking it to garage where I'd set up a small workspace in the corner David wasn't using. The radio just needed new wiring in the power cord, a 15-minute fix. As I worked, a thought came to me, and I propped up my phone to record the repair. This time, the video came out decent. I explained each step clearly, even throwing a story about how Marge and I had danced in the kitchen to Creedence Clearwater Revival on this very radio, the night we found out we were having David. While editing it that night, huddled in my room to avoid questions, I wrote in Marge's book, "The greatest enemy isn't failure. It's the fear of trying something new." I'd heard that from a customer years ago, an old Vietnam vet who'd started a bakery at 70. Seemed fitting now. I uploaded the video at the library the next day, with Ellen looking over my shoulder. "What will you call your channel?" she asked. "Morgan's Fix-It Wisdom." I replied without hesitation. Marge would have approved of the name. That first video led to another, then another. I started filming early in the mornings before anyone was awake, or during the day when the house was empty. I showed viewers how to make homemade cleaners that work better than the expensive store brands, how to extend the life of their clothes with proper repairs, and how to cook affordable meals from leftover ingredients. The soup video was my favorite. Marge's recipe for turning yesterday's roast chicken and vegetables into a stew that could feed a family for days. I filmed it while Lisa and David were at some work function, carefully cleaning up so they'd never know I'd used their kitchen. With each video, I grew more confident. My hands, weathered and spotted with age, no longer embarrassed me on camera. These were hands that had worked, that knew things worth sharing. I was living a double life. Invisible old man in my son's basement by day, Morgan of Morgan's Fix-It Wisdom by night. It wasn't much, but it was mine. A week after uploading my third video, I checked the library computer and nearly fell out of my chair. 12 people had watched the soup video. 12 strangers had listened to what I had to say. I sat there staring at the screen, a lump forming in my throat. Ellen, noticing my expression, came over. "Everything okay, Robe?" People watched. I whispered. People I don't even know. She squeezed my shoulder. "That's how it starts. Keep going." That night, I held Marge's book close to my chest, eyes closed, imagining her beside me. "Marge." I whispered into the darkness of my little room. "Someone's listening." The moment was shattered by David's voice booming from upstairs. "Who took my charger?" "Dad, have you been in my office?" I quickly tucked my phone under the pillow, heart pounding like I was 16 again, hiding a beer from my father. David didn't come down to check, but the fear of discovery was real. What would they say if they knew? Would they laugh? Would they try to stop me? Would they even care? As I drifted off to sleep, I had no idea that my little videos were about to change everything. That somewhere out there, people were beginning to share them. That my quiet voice was starting to echo far beyond the walls that contained me. Life has a funny way of surprising you just when you convince yourself nothing will ever change. 2 weeks after uploading my soup video, I dragged myself to the library on a rainy Tuesday, already planning my next tutorial on how to weatherproof leaky windows using materials from the dollar store. "Robert Morgan." Ellen's voice boomed across the quiet library as I walked through the door, earning us both dirty looks from a new head librarian. Ellen ignored them, waving me over with such urgency I thought something was wrong. "Have you checked your channel lately?" she whispered, eyes wide behind her reading glasses. I shook my head. It had been 3 days since my last visit. Ellen practically shoved me into a chair and logged into my account. And there it was, a number so unexpected I thought it was an error. 203,847 views. "But that's not possible," I mumbled, staring at the screen. "There must be some mistake." Ellen was already scrolling through the comments section, which had exploded overnight. Hundreds of messages from strangers across the country. You remind me of my dad who passed last year. Same voice, same patience. Thank you for this. Finally, practical advice from someone who actually knows what they're talking about. Subscribed. This is exactly how my grandpa used to explain things. Brought tears to my eyes. Something caught in my throat as I read comment after comment. People weren't just watching, they were connecting. My hands, my voice, my old-fashioned know-how, everything my family dismissed as outdated was suddenly valuable to thousands of strangers. The tire patch video had gone viral first, then the homemade cleaning solution, and finally the soup recipe. Someone had shared them in a Facebook group called Depression-Era Tips for Modern Hard Times, and from there, they'd exploded. You need to monetize this channel immediately, Ellen said, already clicking through settings pages. You're leaving money on the table. I'd heard Owen mention YouTube money before, but assumed it was just for the big shots with millions of followers. Ellen explained how the AdSense program worked while setting up my account. Don't expect payment right away, she cautioned. YouTube only pays out after you reach the $100 threshold, and they operate on a net 60-day cycle. This month's earnings won't be processed until next month, and then paid the month after that. I nodded, digesting this information. Not immediate money, but potentially significant in time. And you'll need your own bank account for direct deposits, Ellen added. Do you have one? I shook my head, explaining how Lisa had convinced me years ago to close my personal account to simplify things by having David handle my finances. Another way they'd slowly stripped away my independence. That needs to change, Ellen said firmly. We'll get you set up with an account tomorrow. Over the next few weeks, my channel kept growing. I recorded new videos early mornings or when everyone was out of the house. My hands stopped shaking on camera. I looked directly at the lens without feeling foolish. I even started each video with what was becoming my catchphrase. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it is broke, well, that's what old Morgan's here for. By the end of the month, my subscriber count had passed 50,000. In my most popular video yet, I demonstrated how to fix a flat tire using just the emergency kit most cars come with. While patching the rubber, I reminisce about 1983, working late at the shop while blasting Journey's Don't Stop Believin', so loud the windows rattled. Every time I hear that song now, I told the camera, I smell rubber and WD-40. Music and memories get all tangled up, don't they? What songs take you back? Drop it in the comments below. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people shared their musical time machines, songs that transported them to high school dances, first apartments, road trips in beat-up Chevys. A community was forming around my channel, people sharing not just repair tips but pieces of their lives. Meanwhile, Ellen helped me open a basic checking account at the credit union. I updated my AdSense information, but a notice appeared on screen. Changes to payment methods will take effect after the next payment cycle. So the first check will be sent to David's address? I asked. Ellen nodded grimly. Unfortunately, yes. The system's already processing this month's earnings. The next payment should go to your new account, though. 2 months after my video started gaining traction, I received an email notification. My first payment of $2,143.78 had been issued and would arrive by mail within 5 to 7 business days. For the next week, I checked the mail every day before anyone else could get to it. But on Thursday, I had to go with Ellen to the senior center for a computer class she was teaching. When I returned home that afternoon, I noticed a stack of mail on the counter had already been sorted. My heart sank. There was no Google envelope. That evening, Lisa waltzed in with shopping bags from Best Buy. David followed, carrying a massive 75-inch smart TV box. Nice timing, she said coldly when she saw me watching. We just got our new TV. David's about to unbox it. As David set the box down against the wall, I could see the price tag still attached to the side. $1,899.99. Where's my check? The words came out sharper than I'd intended. Your check. Lisa laughed. a harsh sound with no humor. You mean the money you owe us for letting you live here rent-free for the past year and a half? David stepped back from the TV box, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. Dad, you've been using our house, our electricity, our internet to make these videos. Did you really think that money was just yours to keep? I felt lightheaded, like I might topple over. You opened my mail? It was addressed to this house. Lisa cut in. And it's a good thing I did. Were you planning to hide this from us? After all we've done for you? All they'd done for me? The barely concealed contempt, the constant reminders that I was unwanted, the dismissal of everything I knew or cared about. This was what I should be grateful for. I was going to tell you. I said, quietly, I want to contribute. But that check was mine. I earned it. David shook his head. You earn it using our resources, while living under our roof, eating our food. That makes it family money. Owen appeared in the doorway, his teenage face conflicted. He looked at me, then quickly away, unable to meet my eyes. You stole from me, I said, the realization dawning with sickening clarity. My own family stole from me. Oh, stop being so dramatic, Lisa snapped. It's not stealing when you owe us way more than that check was worth. Consider it partial payment for being a burden all this time. A burden. There was the word that had been hanging unspoken between us for months. I looked at the TV again, its glossy screen reflecting my stunned face, my life's work converted into pixels and plastic without my consent. I was saving that money, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, for Owen's college fund. The room went silent. Owen's eyes widened, and for a moment, Lisa had the decency to look uncomfortable, but she recovered quickly, turning away with a dismissive wave. He has a college fund. We don't need your YouTube pennies. That night, I couldn't sleep. The betrayal cut deep, but there was something else growing inside me. Determination. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of their new TV through the floor above. I thought about the thousands of people who had connected with my videos, who valued what I had to offer. If my own family couldn't see my worth, maybe I needed to focus on the audience that did. The next morning, I walked to the library earlier than usual, finding Ellen already there sorting books. They took the money, I said simply when she looked up. Her face fell. Oh, Robert, I'm so sorry. I shrugged, trying to appear stronger than I felt. Let's make sure it doesn't happen again. I spent the next month focusing on my channel, creating more valuable content than ever. The views kept climbing, and my subscriber count passed 100,000. According to my analytics, my next payment would be even larger, around $3,500. This time, it would go directly to my new bank account. But a week before payday, I received an unexpected email from AdSense. Your payment method has been updated. Someone had changed my payment settings back to the original information. When I mentioned this to Ellen, her face fell. They must have accessed your account somehow. Did you use their computer or leave yourself logged in at home? I hadn't, but I had written down my password in Marge's book since I kept forgetting it. They must have found it while snooping through my things. Ellen helped me change the password and security questions, but it was too late for this payment. Another check would be arriving at David's address. Sure enough, a month after my first check had been stolen, the exact scenario repeated itself. I came home to find Lisa and David discussing plans for a backyard pool renovation, with contractor brochures spread across the kitchen table. Perfect timing, Lisa said when she saw me. We're deciding between the kidney-shaped or the rectangle design. Since you're contributing, you get a vote. I stood there, clutching my empty mailbox key, the betrayal hitting me harder the second time. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was a calculated disrespect, the assumption that I had no right to the fruits of my own labor. That evening, as the family gathered around their new TV, I stood in the living room doorway. You took my check again, I said simply. Lisa didn't even look away from the screen. We're putting in a pool this summer. Consider it your contribution to family improvements. David at least had the grace to look uncomfortable, but he said nothing to contradict his wife. I looked at Owen, who was staring intently at his phone, pretending not to hear the conversation. His shoulders were hunched, his expression pained. In that moment, something crystallized within me. This wasn't just about me anymore. What kind of example were we setting for this boy? That it's acceptable to take what isn't yours? That older relatives are ATMs to be used and discarded? I stood there, feeling the weight of my years and my choices, and made a decision. This was meant for Owen, I said quietly. For his future, not for your pool. Lisa finally turned to look at me. Her expression, a mixture of surprise and irritation. We'll decide what's best for our son. Thank you very much. I nodded once, then turned and walked the garage without another word. Inside, I pulled out Marge's book and opened to a fresh page. Betrayal from strangers is painful, I wrote. Betrayal from family leaves scars. But giving up is not an option. With trembling fingers, I picked up my phone and began planning my next batch of videos. More detailed, more valuable than before. If they were going to take my money, I would simply have to make more of it. Much more. Marge, I whispered to the empty garage, I won't give up. Not now. Not ever. Outside, the spring evening was settling into dusk, birds calling their last songs before night fell. In the house behind me, my family watched their new TV, unaware that their actions had ignited not defeat, but determination. I didn't know then how quickly things would change. How the small spark I'd kindled was about to become a wildfire. How my quiet voice would soon reach millions. All I knew was that tomorrow I would wake up and keep going. Because that's what Marge would have wanted. That's what I needed to do. For myself. For my dignity. And for a grandson who was watching more closely than anyone realized. 3 days after my confrontation with Lisa about the second stolen check, my phone buzzed with an email notification while I was filming a tutorial on fixing leaky faucets. It was from a producer at America Morning, one of those nationwide breakfast TV shows where hosts with perfect teeth sip coffee and interview celebrities between cooking segments. At first, I thought it was spam. Why would a major network show contact an old guy making DIY videos in his son's garage? But the email mentioned specific details from my videos and included a phone number with New York area code. Ellen confirmed it was legitimate when I showed her at the library. They want me to come on their show. I said, still unable to believe it. They say I'm the authentic voice America needs in these uncertain economic times. Ellen beamed. Of course they do. You've hit 2 million subscribers, Robert. Your last video got shared by 3 major news sites. You're not just some random YouTuber anymore. You're a phenomenon. I'm just an old mechanic showing people how to save money, I mumbled, overwhelmed by the thought of appearing on national television. No, Ellen said firmly. You're giving people more than repair tips. You're giving them hope, connection to the past, wisdom they can use. In a world of flashy gimmicks and 20-something influencers selling snake oil, you're the real deal. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a green room in Manhattan, clutching Marge's book to my chest like a shield. I'd never flown before, had to get my first passport at 62 just for this trip. The producer had arranged everything, including a hotel suite bigger than David's entire first floor. When the makeup lady tried to cover my age spots and the stylist suggested a more camera-friendly outfit than my plaid shirt and khakis, I put my foot down. People watch me because I'm not pretending to be something I'm not. I told them, if you want the shiny version, hire an actor. The producer, a sharp-eyed woman named Janet, grinned and told the staff to back off. That authenticity is exactly why we booked him. The show's hosts were kinder than I expected. No condescending questions about being an internet sensation at my age. Instead, they asked about my life, my years running the garage, and the wisdom I gathered along the way. When they asked what inspired me to start making videos, I hesitated, weighing how much to reveal about my family situation. After my wife Marge passed, I moved in with my son's family. I said carefully, let's just say I didn't feel particularly useful anymore. The videos were my way of proving I still had something to offer. Then I pulled out Marge's book. The leather was worn soft from decades of handling. The pages yellowed and dog-eared. This is where it all started. 40 years of notes, quotes, and life lessons Marge and I collected. The camera zoomed in as I opened to a random page. Here's one from '86. The customer with the dirtiest hands often has the cleanest heart. That was about Hank Guthrie, a farmer who'd bring in his tractor covered in mud, but never failed to bring us fresh corn in summer. I flipped to another page. And this one's from Marge when she was in hospice. Love isn't what you take. It's what you leave behind. She wasn't just my wife. She was my compass. The studio went quiet. One of the hosts wiped her eye, trying to be subtle about it. The producer was frantically signaling something to the camera crew. Later, I learned that social media was exploding with reactions in real time. Hashtag Marge's Wisdom was trending nationwide. By the time the segment ended, the show had received thousands of messages. The host announced they were extending my interview to the next day's show, unprecedented for a guest who wasn't promoting a blockbuster movie. Back in my hotel room, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications. Ellen had helped me set up proper social media accounts before the trip, and now they were flooded with new followers. My YouTube subscriber count had jumped by 1 million overnight. Among the flood of messages was an email from Harper & Row, one of the biggest publishing houses in the country. They wanted to discuss a book deal for Marge's Wisdom, Life Lessons from an American Garage. The next morning, before heading back to the studio, I took a video call with their editorial team. They offered a $1.2 million advance on the spot. I nearly fell off my hotel chair. "We want the book by Christmas," the editor said. "We'll provide ghostwriters to help with the timeline." I shook my head. No ghostwriters. These are my words, my life with Marge. I'll write it myself. They weren't thrilled but agreed when I promised to meet weekly deadlines. The contract arrived by courier before I left for the studio that afternoon. The second day's interview went even better than the first. I told stories about the early days with Marge, building our business from scratch during the recession of the late '70s, raising David with more love than money. People today think they need the newest gadget or trendiest vacation spot to be happy. I said, but Marge and I were happiest when we had the least. Friday nights with a rented VHS movie and homemade pizza. Camping by Lake Erie because we couldn't afford flights to Florida. Those memories shine brighter than any luxury cruise or fancy restaurant. The segment ended with the host announcing that universities, corporations, and community organizations across the country are lining up to have Robert Morgan share his wisdom in person. I hadn't planned on becoming a speaker, but my new agent, yes, I somehow had an agent now, assured me the lecture circuit could be lucrative. "You're looking at $50,000 per appearance minimum," she said. "More for corporate events." My head was spinning. 2 months ago, I'd been filming videos on a second-hand phone, hiding from my family. Now I was signing contracts worth millions. Life can change direction faster than a weather vane in a tornado. I flew home to Cincinnati with a dizzying number of opportunities ahead of me. When the taxi dropped me at David's house, I took a deep breath before going inside. I hadn't told them about the TV appearance or anything that followed. Part of me wanted to see their faces when they realized what had happened. I didn't have to wait long. As soon as I opened the door, I could hear the TV in the living room playing a recording of my interview. Lisa's voice carried down the hallway, unnaturally cheerful. "Dad, you're back. We were just watching your big TV debut. Why didn't you tell us? We would have come to New York with you." David stood beside her, wearing an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and calculation. Behind them, Owen sat on the couch, his face lighting up with genuine happiness when he saw me. "I didn't think you'd be interested," I said simply, setting down my suitcase, "given our recent disagreements about my videos." Lisa brushed this aside with a wave of her hand. "Water under the bridge. We're so proud of you. The whole neighborhood is talking about it." I bet they were. The same neighbors who'd heard Lisa complain about her moocher father-in-law at every block party were now seeing me on national television. "How was New York?" David asked, his voice strained with forced casualness. "Did they put you up somewhere nice?" "The Plaza," I replied, watching their eyes widen. "And I've got some meetings back there next week." Book deal, speaking engagements, that sort of thing. Lisa smiled and faltered, but her eyes sharpened like a hawk spotting a field mouse. A book deal? That's wonderful. I always said you should write down all those stories. No, she hadn't. She called my stories depressing old man nostalgia just last Christmas. Later that evening, after a dinner where Lisa served my favorite meatloaf, which she previously claimed was too heavy for her digestion, David followed me to the garage. He closed the door behind him, shifting from foot to foot like he used to do as a boy when he'd broken something. "Dad, I know things have been tense lately," he began, staring at the floor. "I didn't handle the situation with your YouTube earnings well." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing, letting the silence stretch between us. "The thing is," he continued, "Lisa and I have been talking about starting our own business for years. A food truck concept. Farm-to-table stuff, very trendy right now. Here it comes. We got everything planned out, but banks aren't lending like they used to. We need about $50,000 for startup costs." He finally met my eyes. "With your new success, I thought maybe you want to invest in your family's future. Be a part of something we build together." The irony was almost too much. After stealing my earnings and treating me like a burden, they wanted to be business partners. "I'll think about it," I said neutrally. "I've got a lot of decisions to make right now." For the next few days, Lisa was unrecognizable. Cooking my favorite meals, asking about my videos, even sitting through an entire explanation of how to replace a garbage disposal without once checking her phone. David suddenly remembered all our father-son fishing trips, recounting to anyone who would listen. The only person who seemed genuinely happy for me, without an angle, was Owen. One afternoon, while Lisa was out shopping and David at work, Owen knocked on my door. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, a lanky teenager with my chin and Marge's eyes. "Grandpa, can I talk to you about something?" I nodded, setting aside the draft of my first book chapter. "I just wanted to say..." He hesitated. "I thought your videos were cool from the beginning. I subscribed with a secret account so Mom wouldn't know." My throat tightened. "You did." He nodded, "and I didn't want them to take your money. I heard them planning it the first time, but I was too scared to warn you. I'm sorry." In that moment, looking at my grandson's face filled with genuine remorse, I felt a surge of hope I hadn't experienced in years. Not everyone in this family saw me as a walking ATM. "Thank you for telling me, Owen," I said. "That means a lot." Over the next few months, my new life took shape at dizzying speed. The book deal was finalized. My speaking tour was booked solid for 6 months. The YouTube channel hit 5 million subscribers, and brands were offering sponsorship deals worth more than I'd earned in my best year at the garage. My second TV appearance, this time on an evening talk show, went viral when I shared how Marge used to say, "Forgive, but keep your heart open. Closing it after being hurt only punishes you twice." The host asked what that meant to me now. "It means I can acknowledge when I've been wrong without letting it poison my future." I answered, "Life's too short for grudges, but it's also too precious for doormats." The studio audience erupted in applause. Online, viewers shared stories of family estrangements, reconciliations, and the complicated terrain of forgiveness. Back at David's house, the atmosphere grew increasingly strained. My new financial independence meant Lisa's sudden interest in my hobbies, and David's nostalgic reminiscences weren't having their desired effect. I hadn't mentioned the stolen checks, but the ghosts of their actions haunted every conversation. One evening, David cornered me in the kitchen after dinner. Owen was upstairs doing homework, and Lisa was pretending to load the dishwasher, while obviously eavesdropping. "Dad, about that investment we discussed," David began. "We'd need to move quickly to secure the location we want. I was thinking $500,000 would give us a proper launch, with marketing and everything." The amount had mysteriously increased tenfold from our last conversation. I took a slow sip of coffee, buying time to compose my thoughts. "That's a significant investment," I said finally. "What happens if the business fails?" David looked offended. "It won't fail. Lisa's cousin ran a successful food truck in Portland. And anyway, we're family. This isn't just about money. But it was about money. It had always been about money with them, or rather, my perceived lack of it. Until now. I'll need to see a business plan, I said reasonably. My financial advisors will want to review it. I didn't have financial advisors yet, but I would soon. My agent had set up meetings with a team of professionals to help manage my sudden wealth. David's expression darkened. Since when do you need advisors to help your own son? We're not strangers pitching you on Shark Tank. No, I agreed quietly. Strangers haven't taken my checks without permission. The kitchen went silent. Lisa stopped pretending to load dishes and turned to face us, her cheeks flushed with anger. Is that what this is about? You're punishing us over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That's what theft became when confronted. Before I could respond, David's approach shifted from wounded to threatening. You know, Dad, people might be interested to hear how you abandoned your family after Mom died, how we took you in when you had nothing, and now you're living it up while refusing to help your own son. The threat hung in the air between us. I hadn't abandoned anyone. Marge's medical bills had bankrupted me, and David had reluctantly offered his basement after I lost the house. But David knew how public perception worked. A well-placed story could tarnish my newly polished image. I looked at my son, really looked at him. When had he become this person? Was it my fault somehow? Had I been so focused on the garage, on making a living, that I'd failed to teach him what really mattered? If you want to tell that story, David, go ahead, I said, finally. But I think you know it's not the truth. And I think you know, deep down, that Marge would be heartbroken to see you try and extort your own father. I walked past them both to my room, my heart heavier than when I'd had nothing. Success hadn't solved my problems. It had just revealed their true nature. That night, as I packed a suitcase for my upcoming book tour, there was a soft knock at my door. Owen stood there, clutching his backpack. I heard everything, he said simply. They're wrong, Grandpa. I smiled sadly. I know, buddy. The next morning, I called a family meeting. David and Lisa sat stiffly on the couch, while Owen perched on the armrest beside me. I'm leaving today for my book tour. I'll be gone for 3 months, but I've made some decisions I want to share with you. I slid an envelope across the coffee table. This contains information about a trust I've established for Owen's education. It will cover his college and any advanced degrees he chooses to pursue. Owen's eyes widened. Lisa reached for the envelope, but I placed my hand on it. The trust is irrevocable and can only be used for education, I continued. No one can access it for any other purpose. I turned to David and Lisa. As for the food truck business, I've thought about it carefully. Money can't buy respect, but I believe in second chances. I'm willing to invest $50,000 as a proper business loan with fair terms, not a gift or a handout. David started to protest, but I held up my hand. You can either accept these terms or not. But understand this. I won't be manipulated, threatened, or stolen from again. I let my gaze move between them. Those days are over. Lisa looked like she'd swallowed something sour. David's expression was unreadable. Finally, he nodded. We'll take the loan. On your terms. As I wheeled my suitcase toward the waiting taxi, Owen ran out the driveway. Will you come back, Grandpa? He asked, worry clear in his young face. I hugged him tightly. Of course I will, but things will be different. Better, I hope. As the taxi pulled away, I watched the house recede in the rear window. The same house that felt like a prison now looked small and unimportant against the wide horizon stretching before me. I patted the leather book in my jacket pocket. Well, Marge, I whispered, I guess we're not done yet. There's still a lot of road ahead. And for the first time in years, I was genuinely excited to see where it would lead. My 3-month speaking tour stretched into 6, then 8. I visited 43 states, spoke at universities, corporate retreats, and community centers. Everywhere I went, people lined up to tell me how my story had touched them, how fixing a coffee maker using my instructions had given them confidence to tackle bigger problems, how Marge's wisdom had helped them reconnect with estranged family members. I'd returned to Cincinnati between trips, staying at hotels rather than David's house. The distance felt necessary for all of us. Owen would visit me for dinner, eagerly sharing his school projects and new interests. David and Lisa maintained a polite but strained relationship with me, accepting the business loan, but clearly disappointed it wasn't the $500,000 handout they'd hoped for. On a crisp October morning, a year after my first viral video, I stood on a tree-lined street in Cincinnati's Oakley neighborhood, watching a real estate agent unlock the door to a stately brick colonial. It wasn't flashy. No swimming pool or marble columns, just a solid, well-built home with a large yard and a detached garage big enough for a workshop. "It's perfect," I told the agent, not even bothering to negotiate the price. That night, as I sat in my hotel room, reviewing the purchase agreement, I had one of those moments of clarity that seem to arrive when you least expect them. I'd achieved what most would consider success: financial security, public recognition, a reclaimed sense of purpose. But something was still missing. I pulled out Marge's book and flipped through its well-worn pages until I found what I was looking for. A life well lived is measured by what you leave behind, not what you pile up. Marge had said this during her final weeks, when a hospice nurse asked if she wanted to check anything off her bucket list. Instead of exotic locations, she talked about the people whose lives she'd touched, the community she'd helped build. I knew then what I needed to do with the second chance I'd been given. 2 weeks later, I met with an architect and a nonprofit consultant. I didn't just want a home for myself. I wanted to create something lasting, something that would outlive me. The plans evolved quickly. A community center attached to my new property, designed to bridge the generational divide that increasingly defined American life. I would call it Marge's Wisdom Center. The concept was simple but powerful. A place where seniors could share their knowledge and stories, where younger generations could learn practical skills being lost to time, and where the community could gather around the idea that wisdom should be preserved and passed down, not dismissed as outdated. My publisher loved the idea, agreeing to fund a series of wisdom scholarships for students who documented the stories and skills of elders in their communities. Construction began in January. I supervised every detail, from the comfortable seating in the main gathering space to the fully equipped workshop where hands-on classes would be taught. One wall was dedicated to photographs from the 70s and 80s, snapshots of everyday American life when communities were more connected and self-sufficient. The center took shape alongside my new life, both built on foundations stronger than before. Owen became my unofficial assistant, spending weekends helping organize the workshop tools and offering surprisingly insightful suggestions about making the center appealing to younger visitors. His enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself seeing the project through his eyes, a bridge not just between generations broadly, but between him and me specifically. One Saturday, as we inventoried donated tools, he asked a question that caught me off guard. "Grandpa, do you think Dad and Mom will ever really understand what they did wrong?" I set down the socket wrench I'd been examining and considered his question carefully. Understanding requires wanting to see your own mistakes. "Owen, some people never develop that ability." "But they're your family," he persisted. "Don't you want them to be part of all this?" The truth was complicated. Part of me wanted to exclude them entirely, to create this new chapter without the people who'd made me feel worthless. But another part, the part that still heard Marge's voice in quiet moments, knew better. Family is more than blood, I told him. It's who shows up for you, who values what you offer. Sometimes it includes relatives, sometimes not. I paused, seeing concern in his young face. "But yes, I'm leaving the door open for them. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or letting people treat you poorly again. It means not letting bitterness poison your own heart." On a brilliant May morning, with spring flowers dotting the landscape grounds, Marge's Wisdom Center officially opened. Local media covered the event, which had grown far beyond my initial expectations. The mayor cut a ribbon. A high school band played. Food trucks lined the parking lot. And there, among the crowd of nearly 300 people, stood David, Lisa, and Owen. They received invitations, of course, but I hadn't been sure they would come. Owen had kept their attendance a secret, wanting to surprise me. When the formal ceremony ended and people began touring the facilities, David approached me, looking more uncomfortable than I'd ever seen him. "This is impressive, Dad," he said, gesturing at the center. "Really something." "Thank you," I replied simply. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he continued, choosing his words carefully, "about how we treated you, about the example we set for Owen." He swallowed hard. "I'm not proud of it." It wasn't a dramatic, tearful apology, but from David, who'd inherited my stubborn pride and difficulty admitting mistakes. It was significant. "The past is written," I told him, echoing something Marge used to say. "But we get fresh pages every day." Lisa approached cautiously, hovering at the edge of our conversation until I acknowledged her with a nod. "The food truck is doing well," she offered, as if providing evidence of their redemption. "We've paid back half the loan already." "That's good to hear," I said, and meant it. Their success or failure had ceased to be a measure of my own worth. I gestured toward the main building. "We need volunteers, people to teach classes, help with events, connect with the community. If you're interested in being part of this, there's work to be done." Lisa looked surprised, clearly having expected either a warmer reconciliation or a colder rejection. "What kind of classes?" "Cooking would be useful," I suggested, "especially budget-friendly meals that stretch ingredients." Something shifted in her expression, a realization, perhaps, that I was offering not just forgiveness but a chance at genuine respect, earned rather than demanded. Inside the center, the main hall was filling with visitors. A group of teenagers clustered around a display where an 87-year-old former mechanic demonstrated how to rebuild a carburetor. In another corner, a woman in her 70s guided young parents through techniques for mending children's clothes instead of replacing them. "The goal is intergenerational exchange," I explained as we walked through. Young people filmed the sessions, creating digital archives of skills and stories that might otherwise be lost. One of the most popular stations featured a row of vintage tools, hand drills, planes, and saws that required no electricity, alongside their modern counterparts. "I may be a wisdom guru now," I told a group of wide-eyed middle schoolers, "but I still can't figure out the defrost settings on my microwave." Their laughter warmed me more than any standing ovation at my speaking engagements. By late afternoon, the initial crowd had thinned, leaving a core group of genuinely interested community members signing up for programs and volunteer positions. I spotted Owen introducing his friends to Eleanor, a retired librarian who'd been teaching people how to research their family histories. On the wall behind them hung a large frame quote, the unofficial motto of the center: "True wealth is not what you keep, but what you give away." David and Lisa stayed the entire day, awkward at first, but gradually finding their places. Lisa joined a discussion about starting small businesses, offering surprisingly honest insights about the challenges they face with their food truck. David, who'd inherited my mechanical aptitude but rarely used it, found himself drawn to the workshop area. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the new building, I stood on the back porch overlooking the grounds. The center would host its first regular classes tomorrow, everything from basic home repairs to financial literacy, from cooking techniques to digital privacy protection for seniors. Ellen appeared beside me, her silver hair now styled in a fashionable bob that suited her role as the center's administrative director. "Quite a day, Robert," she said, handing me a cup of coffee. "You've created something remarkable here." I shook my head. "We created it. I just had the resources and the idea. Everyone here made it real." Inside, someone had put on music. Leonard Skinner's Sweet Home Alabama floated through the open windows. Not my first choice for a community center soundtrack, but triggered a cascade of memories. Road trips with Marge in our old Chevy, cranking the radio with the windows down. Teaching David to drive with that song playing. Backyard barbecues where neighbors became family. Different times, but the important things remained constant. The following weeks settled into a rhythm. The center averaged 60 visitors daily. Retirees sharing skills in the morning, school groups in the afternoon, community events in the evening. Local businesses donated materials and equipment. The university sent student volunteers who received credit for documenting oral histories. David and Lisa became regular participants, not out of obligation, but seemingly genuine interest. David discovered a talent for teaching basic car maintenance to teenagers. Lisa's cooking workshops became unexpectedly popular, especially her sessions on repurposing leftovers. The transformation wasn't instant or complete. They still had moments of self-interest and insensitivity, but change was happening one interaction at a time. The power dynamic had shifted not because of my financial success, but because I no longer needed their approval to feel valuable. Owen flourished in this new environment. He started a YouTube series called Wisdom Transfer, filming seniors demonstrating everything from darning socks to debugging computer code. His generation, supposedly disconnected from practical skills, proved hungry for authentic knowledge. One evening, after everyone had gone home, I found Owen sitting alone in the main hall, reading Marge's book. I'd given him permission to borrow it for a school project about family histories. Find anything interesting? I asked, sitting beside him. He nodded, tracing his finger along a page from 1984. I like how Grandma wrote in the margin sometimes, commenting on your notes. I smiled, remembering how we'd sometimes have written conversations in that book when the garage was too busy for us to talk properly. Little jokes, observations, reminders of our shared journey. She once told me that writing things down was a way of telling future generations, "You matter to me." I said that I cared enough about them to preserve what I'd learned. Owen considered this, with the seriousness teenagers reserve for truly important ideas. "That's what I want to do with these videos," he said finally. "Show people they matter, that their knowledge matters." I felt a tightness in my chest that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with pride. Whatever mistakes David and Lisa had made as parents, they'd raised a son with an open heart and a keen mind. "Listen with your heart," I told him, "and you'll always find your way." Summer turned to fall, and the center continued to evolve. We added programs based on community feedback, a tool lending library, a repair cafe where people could bring broken items and learn to fix them, intergenerational cooking classes that combined traditional techniques with modern nutrition. The Wisdom Scholarships expanded to 10 universities nationwide. My book topped the New York Times bestseller list for 12 weeks. Corporations invited me to speak about building bridges between generations in the workplace. But my favorite days were the quiet ones at the center, watching connections form between unlikely pairs. A teenage coder teaching a grandmother to video chat with her grandchildren. A retired contractor showing young homeowners how to repair their own plumbing. A Vietnam veteran and a Middle Eastern refugee discovering common ground over chess. David and Lisa's food truck became a regular fixture at center events. The three of us had reached a cautious peace. Not the blind affection they'd feigned during their money grab, but something more honest and sustainable. One crisp October evening, exactly 2 years after my first viral video, I sat on the center's porch watching the sunset. The maple trees lining the property blazed in autumn colors, and the air held that particular sharpness that signals winter's approach. Owen joined me, camera in hand. "Mind if I get some footage for the anniversary video? Just you reflecting on the journey?" I nodded, watching him set up his equipment with practiced ease. At 17, he moved with confidence I'd never had at his age. "What would you say is the most important lesson you've learned through all this?" he asked, once the camera was rolling. I thought about the roller coaster of the past 2 years, from invisible burden to YouTube sensation, from betrayed father to community builder. So many lessons, hard-won and precious. That wisdom isn't about having all the answers. I said finally, it's about asking better questions. And listening, really listening to the answers. Later that night, after Owen had gone home and the center was quiet, I sat in my workshop flipping through Marge's book. After all these years, I still turned to it when I needed to feel her presence. "We did it, love." I whispered to the pages filled with our shared handwriting. It's not what we planned, but maybe it's better. The center hummed with potential energy. The conversations that would happen tomorrow. The connections yet to be made. The wisdom waiting to be shared. Not just my wisdom or Marge's, but the collective experience of a community rediscovering the value of its elders. I closed the book and placed it carefully on the shelf. Unlike before, I no longer needed to hide it away. Now it stood among dozens of similar journals, new wisdom books being created by center participants, each filled with the kind of practical knowledge and hard-earned insights that can't be Googled. Outside my window, Cincinnati continued its nighttime rhythm. Cars passing, porch lights glowing, lives unfolding in apartments and houses across the city. Somewhere out there, people were watching my videos, reading my book, perhaps changing how they viewed their parents or grandparents. It wasn't fame or money that gave me peace as I prepared for bed that night. It was knowing that in my own small way, I'd helped bridge the gap between generations. I'd transformed my own pain into something useful for others. And in doing so, I'd found what had been missing all along, not just purpose, but connection. The very thing Marge and I had valued most in our decades together. As I drifted towards sleep, I could almost hear her whisper, "Not bad for an old mechanic, Robbie. Not bad at all."